everyone, my name is Dr. Susan Hegarty. I'm from the DCU Water Institute. And today I'm going to talk to you about a project that we've had ongoing for the past 2 years in collaboration with Earthwatch Europe, which has been funded by Royal Bank of Canada. And one of the things that we've been doing in this project is rolling out a water blitz to get citizens involved in monitoring water quality throughout Ireland. So today what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about is how we've done that, talking to you about the groups that have got involved, who has got involved, and I'm going to speak very briefly about the results of the latest water blitz, simply because it's just happened and we haven't quite done the analysis yet. So I'll give you a brief glimpse as to what actually we've discovered. So first of all, just a little bit about citizen science at DCU Water Institute. As I mentioned, we've been partnering with Earthwatch Europe and Royal Bank of Canada for the past 2 years. We entered into a partnership with them in summer in 2019. And one of the things of that partnership, one of the things we're going to roll out was a water blitz, which had been happening in the Thames catchment in the UK for the past 10 years or so, and which Earthwatch decided to roll out in various countries within Europe. So Luxembourg, Paris in France, and Dublin were also going to get involved in 2019. We were really excited about this. It was our first venture into citizen science at DCU. And the objective here was to send out very simple kits to the general public for them to take water samples, to test the water themselves for phosphates and nitrates, do a very simple desktop survey in terms of whether there's litter, whether there's algae, things like that that are happening within the water. They would upload those results on an app on their smartphone, and then those results would be shared with us. And importantly for us, they would get feedback, real-time feedback about the quality of their water from the results that they had submitted. We had no clue as to how this was going to go. We rolled it out. It was picked up. As you can see, we've had Evelyn Cusack, our neighbours in Met Éireann, Evelyn Cusack and Seamus Walsh from Met Éireann, launch it in September 2019. It was picked up very quickly by some online media sites. So the Journal picked it up quite quickly. And that produced a huge amount of interest in the general public. So over 2 days, we had over 1,000 people registering to take part in this. That overwhelmed us, to be honest with you. We weren't expecting that. We didn't have that many kits to send out as well. We learned a huge amount from that experience, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what we learned. And that meant that this year, we were supposed to do this every year. So we were supposed to do it in September 2019, September 2020, but of course, September 2020 was hit by the C word. And so we've rolled it out instead, and we delayed it until May 2021. So a couple of weeks ago, we rolled this out again. And this time we changed our approach and took a much more focused approach. So going back 2019, when we launched it initially, a large group of people got involved. The Tidy Towns network throughout the East Coast particularly were involved. We initially targeted the Greater Dublin area for this, but as soon as it got picked up on national media, other areas also wanted to get involved. So the Tidy Towns groups, particularly in the Leinster area, became involved. Youth groups became involved, a small number of river groups, and really importantly, some families, and a lot of families got involved, particularly within Dublin city centre and the Greater Dublin area. Schools also were very enthusiastic. This was at the beginning of September, the middle of September in 2019. As you can see, the days were nice, they were sunny. And so schools got involved because teachers saw that it linked to the curriculum, both primary and second level curriculum in science and in geography. And so this group of students here that you can see who are from a primary school in Dublin went out and took a sample on the Friday with their class, and the teacher took them back out on the Monday to compare samples, to compare water quality in the river after a rainstorm event that had happened at the weekend. Again, a great learning for those particular little kids. So in 2019, We had about 840 people participating. You'll remember that there were over 1,000 people who actually registered. So we had a fall off between people who registered and actually people who participated, which was a pity because we had sent out kits to these people and those kits didn't get used. Nonetheless, we had 342 samples taken and results processed through the app, and 30 catchments were sampled. If you have a look at the map, though, you can see we were targeting the Greater Dublin area, so the Greater Dublin area was heavily sampled. But for example, the entire Shannon catchment, there was only 2 samples in there, which is very interesting, but it would be much better if you had a greater density of samples within these catchments here. So for example, the Shannon catchment here, the Nore, the Blackwater here, the Sure catchment, these catchments where we had very sparse sampling, we thought what a pity, it would be great to actually get more people involved in these areas. Nonetheless, the Liffey was heavily sampled, Bartree and the Dodder, for example, where there was a lot of samples collected in these areas. People tended to go to smaller streams. So you can see what we've done here is just collated the stream order with the amount of samples taken. And you can see that 45 samples were taken in smaller streams. These are the streams that are down the back of people's houses, running through people's farmland, streams that don't normally get sampled with regular monitoring by the EPA. So it's interesting and nice to get those samples. Nonetheless, of course, people also went out and sampled the Liffey, the Nore, the Boyne, those bigger rivers, those higher stream orders. More people sampled, so greater groups of people sampled those larger rivers. A lot of the schools, for example, would have gone to the Liffey just because of ease of access, and gained taken samples there. So a lot of those participants are from those larger groups, those school groups. A couple of scouting groups, for example, have also participated. We learned a lot from 2019. One of the things about looking at the data was because we didn't have very many sample sites in some of those catchments, we thought, what a pity, what a great opportunity to go and get more samples in these areas. And so in 2021, when the opportunity came around again and COVID restrictions started to lift, we saw an opportunity to refocus the Water Blitz. And what we decided to do was to focus particularly around local groups. As a result of COVID, one of the things that people are doing much more is actually getting out into nature, and people are rediscovering a love of nature. They're also rediscovering some of the issues around nature, and so there's a huge environmental awareness, which has resulted in a lot of environmental groups springing up around the country. The Tidy Towns groups are also very active currently. And there's a lot of river trust groups after opening up over the past couple of years. And so we initially focused our efforts on contacting these local groups, these community groups, and offering them to get involved in the Water Blitz. Once we had done that, we then opened it up to the wider public. This produced a much more focused effort, and there was far less fall off from the groups. And you can see that in the number of sample points that we've got here. We've got a lot more sample points in the catchments, and we've expanded our range of catchments from just that Greater Dublin area right across the country. And some of these, particularly these catchments in the Meg, for example, the Bandon River, the Boyne, these are all either local river groups or angling groups, fishing groups, as well as some other environmental groups. So who got involved this time around? And this particular session and this conference and the EPA Water Conference is about engaging local communities. And one of the things, as I mentioned, that we saw was that the local communities have really organized, perhaps due to COVID, and also the impact that the Local Authority Waters Programme that LOPRO has had on local communities and local community groups can really be noticed. And so in this time around, we had 18 river trust groups getting involved. And these are groups which have been organized around the country. They're currently perhaps looking at biodiversity, doing macroinvertebrate surveys through citizen science. And they wanted to add in the chemical science as well in terms of citizen science. So they wanted to find out the phosphates and nitrates and nutrients that are within the area. We also had environmental groups, which are more broader environmental groups taking part, 12 tidy towns groups, which again, we'd already had in the first, in 2019, but these also got involved. And really interestingly, anglers groups started to get involved because they were saying, we want to know what's happening. We're fishing in this area. We are interested in this river because it's part of who we are. And it's why we love going to these areas. What's happening in the river, and we want to know that. And so those groups also got involved. However, when we actually went back and surveyed people, 58% of people, of the participants, had been involved previously in environmental groups, 42% had not. And these were the individuals, the local people, the people who, particularly within Dublin city and suburbs, who just wanted to find out a little bit more about their local area. When we asked about the reasons for getting involved, as you can see, over 80 people just with personal interest. I'm just curious to know what's happening in my area. I'm curious to know how this works, which was an interesting idea. Some people said that they wanted, as you can see, there's 2 or 3 people just wanted to add data into the database. So they knew this was happening. They wanted to add data in. Close to 30 people mentioned the fact that they wanted to show or to teach their children about water or about the local environment. So these are people that just want to get their children out and get them engaged. So as well as these larger groups, you've also got these smaller groups and these individuals taking control of the local area. Over the 4 days, we've almost doubled. So we've got close to 600 samples where we had only 342 last time around. Close to 1,500 people are participating. And while we've increased the number of catchments sampled, the density of catchments sampled has been a lot greater. You can see here the amount of the different age groups that got involved. So it wasn't just one age group. There's a lot of different age groups in there. Obviously, the 36 to 45 and 46 to 55 groups are most represented, but you've got a lot of different age groups being represented. Why do they do it? Again, the idea of it's educational. So just interested in this. Part again, wanting to interact with nature, which quite a few people mentioned COVID in the responses to why they got involved. We asked who should act on the data. And this is an interesting idea in that there is no, well, of course, government agencies comes out there. A lot of people say the general public, farmers, industries, councils, the entire gamut of society needs to act on this data. So it's not just somebody else needs to work on this, but it is everybody. So it's local communities, engaging local communities to work for the environment. So I'll give you just a quick overview just to end with on the results. These will be published, and we're going to produce a report on these. So you can see the density, and you can also see the interesting east-west spread of nitrates. For example, here, nitrates in the east, in the west, quite low, and going into the east, quite high. And we can drill down into that data a bit more. Phosphates, a slightly different story. And there's a report, and the analysis will follow. So as I say, this is just the initial data just to show you. So just to end, it is really possible to get robust data here from these local communities. There is a huge desire and enthusiasm within the local areas to engage in citizen science, and with the right equipment and with the right training, they can do that robustly. It's also an opportunity to engage people in education and teaching them a little bit more about how science works, how water works, and they then can educate others, which is what we've seen. And I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much.